committee meeting to order. Okay, flag salute.
With allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so presentation of the budget message.
As long as it doesn't close. So, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. We're excited that this has been a long year, but a good one. We've been able to all work together and overcome some challenges. So thanks for being here, and union presidents in the back as well. So thanks for showing up tonight too, and the guys that have made it down here, and all of you volunteering your time. We know that this is an unpaid position, so we appreciate that you guys are taking time out of your days and your work schedule to be here. I'm not going to read this word for word, but so I don't want to bore you guys to death. But basically, we went from last year's. I'm going to round these numbers. I'm not going to give you down to the penny, but we went from last year's budget of 13.5 to the $14.4 million. Same thing. We're doing a modified accrual basis of accounting. You'll see that some things like the RSVP fund and some other funds are still in there. Like you guys had questions last year as well about why they're being reported. It's required by ORS. They're not being used. And this should be the last year that's being reported per ORS. So you'll see those in there as well. One of the things I wanted to, that's why you see it, we put the ORS number in there as well in the 24-25. The grant fund, you saw that there was more money in there last year. However, our grant's the only AFG grant is the only thing we can collect from this year. That's our blue card stuff. We have about $15,000 that we're going to be getting some money from to finish that training. Outside of that, the other grants have either fallen off or closed, so they are not being reported because they're not considered. We're not going to be getting anything from those. They've extended. They've gone past their expiration date. The capital fund, we wanted to highlight something in that. You'll see that we were able to, after working through with Chief Smythe and Chief Cole and going over stuff and the considerations in the union that we need for the district, you'll see that we set aside money for at least 2 ambulances, and we have money for equipment and then a small amount for the buildings for facilities maintenance and or stuff to repair. So that you'll see that change in there. Some of the inactive funds, we listed it again. That's something I mentioned to you earlier. The budget process about all of us working together. I want to highlight that again too. We spent weeks, without an exaggeration, us sitting together, talking. Union had some stuff that they wanted to talk about too. Multiple MOAs between the board and the union and stuff, and sitting down and accomplishing some things with the challenges we had to get to where we are today. That being said, you will see a stark difference in personnel services from the previous year to this year. We were able to save a good amount of money. So in 2021, we had about 16 FTEs in admin. We have full-time employees. We have 6 now total. So that has been drastically reduced. Therefore, and then with that staffing model, we have been able to work with all of us working together. That staffing model has brought us to the point where we're providing services with a little bit different with single rules and using that to make sure the community is still being taken care of. We did exceed that tax revenue in 2018 with personnel services, but we have made big changes and strides in the last year to catch up, to help push that cash carry forward is what you guys are used to hearing for the ending fund balance, that word you guys used before. So you'll see that detailed within here as we move forward. There is an increase over the prior year's adopted budget. I want to emphasize that you're going to see from before the 13.5, remember I said rounding numbers, I'm not going to give you the exact read it out to you, but and the 14.4, that doesn't mean that we have a big increase in revenue, like we're getting more taxes and stuff. Some people have asked me questions. That means that we were able to save that money. We are holding on to that money. We're managing 14.4. That doesn't mean that we got an additional $2 million in tax revenue or $2 million in grant revenue. That means we're managing that money to go from July 1st to November because we were able to hold on to that money. We didn't spend it. We didn't spend in overages. There wasn't 16 administration employees anymore, if that gives you that example. So I don't want that to be a confusion. The other thing that we wanted to talk about is the property taxes, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this. You're all involved in the community. Your average increase, there's a, your law, just like you pay your property taxes on your house, they won't let you go up any more than 3%, right? Everybody's used to that when you're paying your property taxes. We're not doing that full increase here because of certain things in the district. You guys know about the enterprise zone, about we're running more calls. These guys definitely know about we're running more calls to a certain area in our zone right here off of Cable Park, Cable Road, that is taxing us a lot. However, we are getting no tax revenue from it. That's an enterprise zone. That, based off of the other recent judgment from Cascade Tissue, or as you guys know as Boise, they will be getting some money back. Money is being held back from taxes. So we will, after talking with this expert over here, who is amazing, and comparing the revenues that we're getting from taxes, we cannot wisely project a 3% increase in tax revenue. It would be smarter to only project 1%. So you'll see that's why you see that difference here, that most places they'll be like, oh, well, we'll average 3% increase. We didn't do that. The changes for services we've talked about with the rules and that been going on. The interest for LGIP stays the same. That's our local government investment pool. That's where our money comes from, taxes from the county straight into that account. And we hold it there for as long as possible, from month to month, because we collect that interest. You'll see that reflected in the amount as somewhat we're averaging over $80,000 in interest a year in that. With overall, the longer we hold it in there, the more interest you get. So we try to only pull it when we need it to capitalize on that. Personnel services, I told you guys about the 16 FTEs and the 6. Now we have 6 full-time administrators. We are doing more with less. So much so we were even talking about we're cleaning our own admin office. So that is something we're doing. We are enjoying that, actually. We're having fun doing that. The nice thing, some of the positive markers though, is next year. So you have Stryker, which is our Stryker equipment and our stretchers that we're paying. We have 2 more years on that. We have this year in January, we're paying our final payments on the fire engines. So we will free up $100,000, a little over $100,000. So next year budget, which is going to be great. We'll just see it reflect that to possibly start move that towards replacing our fleet in the future. Just like we know that you guys know we have an aging fleet. These guys know because they're working with our aging fleet. Some of our trucks are from literally the 80s, and some have well over 200,000 miles they're driving in ambulances in. So we got to take care of that. One of the biggest things that you guys are going to know this year is the contingency fund. So we added the unappropriated fund balance last year. Previously, it's an ORS, it's a requirement to carry us from July to November. It was not there prior to that. It is still there. We were able to increase that cash carry forward, as you guys were used to calling it. But the contingency, what it allows us to do, it's an emergency fund. We had on this page in here, there's some typos that we noticed, but there is no more revolving line of credit. It says it in here, but that will be corrected before the final approved thing. No, excuse me. It's an emergency fund. It doesn't mean that we're using it. It's an emergency that allows, because if you put it in the unappropriated ending fund balance per ORS, we cannot touch it till July 1st. If there isn't you can get to it in a way, but it's a lot more difficult to grab it. With the contingency fund, we come to you if we have an emergency based off of some forecasting stuff that may or may not happen in the next year with everything that's going on surrounding this district. It allows us to use that money more readily if needed. It is not something that will be used unless there is an emergency. It's just there, and it makes it more accessible for the fire chief and for the board to get at if needed. So you'll see that change that we added this year. In the reserves, we increased them. We were able to increase them so literally by holding the line. We worked hard this year in conjunction with the union. I got to give them credit. They were sitting there with us. And we were putting numbers up, drawing on the board, squiggling, and doctor's handwriting. We did a lot of dry erase on all the windows in the admin, putting those numbers together, and we were able to make some of these changes. We have not spent the last 2 years since I've been here. That's why we've been able to jump this unappropriated fund balance, the cash carry forward, so much, because we've been holding on to it. But we're getting to a point now where there's just vehicles that need to be replaced, equipment that needs to be bought. So that jump that we've made with the new staffing model has allowed us to get to this point a little faster than we thought we were going to get to this point. Some of the people that have left as well. We do have budgeted for the retro pay is in there. It's in the personnel services. We also have budgeted for retirement for next year for one of our employees that has already notified us that they're going to retire. And so you will see this reflected throughout the whole budget, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Thank you for being here. Please let me know if you have any questions. Anybody? And I'd be happy to answer them for you, and we'll continue on with this presentation.
We're good.
Good? Perfect.
Okay, well then I think we should move into diving into the budget. So I've put together a presentation, much like we did last year. So this one I'm much happier to discuss with all of you today. So, because I'm really pleased to see where our numbers are at. So for those of you who don't remember who I am, my name is Krista. I'm a consultant. I'm a CPA. I have been an auditor. I have worked in local government, been a CFO. Have a background of a variety of things around these types of issues. So I'm happy to be back with you all today because I think these numbers look so much better, and it's really encouraging to see the hard work that I believe the management, the leadership of the board, the union has done to come together to get where you are all today. So it's very, very exciting. It's a real testament to see the situation of where the district was a year ago to where you are now. And so I'm really excited to kind of go through this and then hope to kind of help, you know, guide Jimmy and admin as they need and the board, and just encourage you to stay the path. So doing really, really great work here. So we'll kind of launch into just a quick little update of here's where we are today. This is the budget process. This looks a little small on the screen, so I apologize. But my little arrow is to mark where are we at today. So the process starts with essentially we have to go through, determine who's the budget officer, which in this case is Chief Sanchez at the district here. And then we have to prepare a proposed budget. There are notices that go out to the public to make sure the public is aware of the meeting today. So that way, if someone from the public, in addition to, you know, our union members and our staff want to attend the meeting, they can. So those notices were posted. And then we kind of go into this process of, okay, now it's time for the budget committee to get together. So that's where we are today. Time for us to come together with our budget committee, our board members, meet, we'll look at this proposed budget, go through the process. You'll determine if you need to adjust it, and hopefully by the end of the evening, you'll be to a place where you can go ahead and approve the tax levy and approve a budget to move it forward in the process. We'll kind of move on from that. So we'll spinning arrow there for you, Jimmy. Nice. And then, so what is the role of our budget committee? I always feel like it's good to lay that out first as we all come together. We've got board members and now public members coming together. So we're here, like this is designed, the intent of Oregon law is to bring everyone together to encourage that public process, that people are getting involved and we're being transparent, right? So that's the whole point. Well, I mean, why bother with the whole public process in the first place if we're not trying to encourage transparency and encourage citizens to be involved and to know what are they paying for, right? So that's really the point of this process. And of course, you know, hopefully we were reviewing the budget. We're making sure that this looks reasonable, asking questions, and then moving it forward through to an approved budget. So I'm going to go through the highlights of the document, not necessarily the line by line detail. So I'll do the highlights in the presentation of what I think is really kind of critical to discuss. And then once we do that, I think it's a great opportunity for the committee to kind of dive into any line item detail, ask questions, you know, get clarity on things. I think Chief Sanchez and Chief Smythe will probably have some answers for you on some of those questions where I can't speak to because they're more familiar with the personnel and the day-to-day operations. And for needing more like technical things, that I can talk to things about like property tax forecasting. How does this work? Or what is the contingency fund? Because we haven't had one before. So with this, Jimmy, let's go back to that really quickly.
Didn't mean to do that.
So Jimmy has highlighted already, what is the total budget, right? So this is the same snippet you basically saw in the budget. Same information. So we're proposing an overall to 7% increase from the prior year. And the biggest, what's like the driver of the increase? Because I think in this situation, I'd be like, my question would be, why are we proposing an increase at all, right? If we were in such a dire financial situation. This is kind of a function of math at the end of the day. When you see the numbers, the biggest thing that's driving those increases are actually where we see positive influence. And that is that beginning fund balance, that number jumping up by 1.4 million. And the ending fund balance is also jumping up with the contingency dollars added together So that is creating a positive influence. That is the driver of the big change here that you're seeing today. There is some offset with some increased expenditures, of course, right? You have to spend a little bit more potentially on some of those materials and service items. So we need to replace some equipment, some things that you had mentioned already, Jimmy, right? So there's that a little bit of the offset that's happening, but really the driver behind the increase is the fact that the district has saved more dollars, because if you look at the prior year adopted budget, that reserve ending fund balance line is only $500,000. And now we're saying, you know what, we feel very confident in forecasting that we're starting off the year at somewhere around this $2.9 million. So, and I actually had called Jimmy and Kate to verify how much money is in the bank. I need to know every bank account, how much money is in there before we put out these numbers, and make sure that this is a number that we think is realistic. So that gives me a lot of confidence that these are looking really good. One of the things I like to do with the budget committee is kind of walk you through some of those significant assumptions or changes in the budget, like what did we look at last year, where we are now. So I like to put that in the order of we talk about revenue first, and then we talk about expenses. So our revenue is really the big deal we're talking about. We have a beginning fund balance, as you call it, cash carry forward.
That's what they used to call it, yes.
Have something to carry forward. Why do we need that? Well, because property taxes, they don't really get paid in Oregon except for really in November. So we have July, August, September, October, basically no money coming in other than the people who have been delinquent property tax collections. So little piddly amounts, maybe 50,000. That does not cover payroll here.
It's nothing for us.
Essentially, that cash carry forward means that there is money in the bank. You don't have to go get a loan or a line of credit to be able to pay payroll and operating costs for the months of July up to November, when the real property tax collections come in. That's when everyone in Oregon's finally like, we paid the assessor, we got our property tax bill. Now the big deposits come in weekly in the month of November. Suddenly the district is getting millions of dollars, right? And the majority of them do come in November. Then the bank then you've got enough money in the bank to make it through the end of the fiscal year. And then we get to July again, we're like, oh, it's June. Do we have enough sitting in the bank for the next year to get us through that period? So you're always going to have, if your budget stayed the same, theoretically, stayed the same today forever, you're always going to have almost $3 million of carry forward every year to be able to operate and exist without having to go get a loan, right? So that's the biggest change here. The other thing I wanted to note was the conflagration. I can't ever say that word.
The
Conflagration?
Yes.
I get it right?
Going
Okay.
out on fires.
I'll just call it confine revenue.
Yeah,
That's easier.
confine revenue.
So that revenue line item, we went ahead and reduced that to 0. And the reason being was we're not aware of any revenue that is going to come in for certain within this next fiscal year. And so it's better to have that assumption of we're not 0. And if there is revenue that happens, because an event happens, then we can always have revenue come in that wasn't budgeted for. That is totally okay. There's nothing wrong with saying 0 assumption. We can't predict whether you're going to have a wildfire or event will get called out, right? So we thought this would be a more prudent approach. Jimmy kind of felt in the past, some of the numbers, he felt like maybe that was a little bit of a plug, like the budget's not balancing. Let's put some numbers in there. And I'm like, well, let's maybe not count on that revenue. If something happens, great, we can switch gears. You know, if you decide that you want to take a resolution to the board to say, you know what, let's put some revenue in this line. You can, and then you can put some offsetting expense in the budget, and that would be a budget adjustment. And you can do that during the course of the year. There are ways to kind of change the course during the year if this happens and you need to. So we'll switch gears a little bit to expenses. You've talked a little bit about staffing model restructuring already. So there's been some really significant changes there. And that's what's created the significant savings for the district, as well as I think holding the line on general operating costs. So we still budgeted for overtime. There's about 800,000 or so of overtime in the proposed budget.
Yes.
And that's in line with prior year actuals. So overtime is very significant in this type of operation. We see that very commonly in our public safety functions to have very significant overtime budgets, especially when staffing is like smaller groups or rotations and shifts, we run into more overtime charges. So it's important that we're using a number that is in line with what we were seeing from payroll reports. And it's, so it's well supported. Of course, this budget includes the COLA that was agreed upon, and medical is still holding about the same as last year. It's about 6.75% last year, and it seemed to come in about the same. So not a lot of change there for medical. It's always nice when medical trends actually stay relatively similar year to year. I wish they didn't go up the way they do, but at least it's a similar trend. We're not suddenly seeing a 13% spike. That's a little more painful when that happens. The materials and service capital outlay, so those are the general operating costs, your contracts, right? Your purchases of new ambulances, those types of things. Trying to hold it fairly flat with a little bit of room for inflation. There are some things that are going up this year that we know of. For example, we've seen a lot of utility companies across the board raising rates. So we've budgeted increases for utilities just to be safe. I know you're not with PGE, but you might have heard what PGE did to ratepayers. And that's a pretty atrocious increase to get an 18% rate increase. So I think we saw that we got estimates from SDIS. The insurance is 20% higher than it was last year for just the general liability. So those things have been factored into the budget as well. Estimates for legal fees. And then, of course, the biggest change would be adding some contingency dollars into the budget, which the district hasn't had in the past. And so that contingency category, it really is part of that ending fund balance, that piece of cash carry forward that ideally you don't want to touch it. You want to be able to roll it forward to keep the operations going. But recognizing that there's some unknowns out there for the district as far as potential litigation and costs, we also wanted to make sure that there was dollars that the board could easily access during the course of the year. So if you needed to get into the contingency dollars, the 500,000, because something came about, really the process is very simple. By putting it in this budget, it makes it so admin staff, all they have to do is write a resolution of a budget transfer and bring it to the board for approval. It's a lot harder if we don't put it in there up front, because then you have to go through a supplemental budget process or wait till next year.
Yes.
And so that's more difficult than just kind of setting up ahead of time, having it there in this category where it's easily accessed throughout the year. Supplemental budget process, for those of you who don't know, haven't been through that, it requires newspaper publications, much like these meetings. So you have to publish notice that you're going to do this, tell them exactly how much, notice the meeting, have a meeting that's special to the supplemental budget, and then also hold a public hearing, meaning does anyone have any comment, right, testimony time before you actually adopt that. So it's just more process driven. Certainly can be done, just takes a little more time, a little more planning.
When the contingency you guys can do, it's still brought to the board
Absolutely.
and it's still
Still
brought.
part of a
for
board
approval.
meeting,
It
still
is
a
not
resolution.
completely transparent. Ready for that one?
Yep, that would be great. Okay, so this is when we get to talk a little bit about property taxes. And Jimmy, thanks for touching on it earlier. Property taxes are still coming in well, so I don't want anyone to think that they're not. So, but the reason why the estimate is more conservative this year is really, like we had talked about, is this whole thing with Boise and getting a refund. The assessor, what they did was they sent a letter to all the taxing authorities, CRFR included, right? And back in January, and said, guess what? We're just withholding tax dollars. Here's how much we think we're going to have to pay out. We split it amongst all of you, and we're putting it on your statement each month. And so as of, I think, the end of March, which was the most recent statement I had on their website, it basically, they had held back almost $100,000 at that point. So once the assessor catches up for the rest of the year with our publishing their statements, then we'll see how much does the total impact. But if as of March, it was already 100,000, and they had only been doing this since January.
Since the judge ruled, yeah.
That's in 3 months. It might be a little bit heftier than we'd like, quite frankly. So, because those were dollars that the district was counting on for revenue, and essentially now you don't get them. So this is why I estimated the property taxes to come in a little bit lower than I normally would, was just to be a little conservative because we have this sort of unknown out there happening. And we don't know exactly how much this is going to be. And I think once we have more clarity on what this is going to be,
There's an appeal
Then it can go
process
back to
too,
normal.
so, yeah.
right? And I'm assuming that if the assessor has communicated with the district about this, if there's going to be changes, I'm sure they're going to send out more letters and communication around this issue as well. So, but I think for right now, conservative might be the best approach, given the situation. If we were too aggressive, that would simply kind of eat up all the great progress that the district has made. So I thought, let me bring something conservative to the table for consideration, and then we can go from there. Yeah, I think we can move on from there. The collection rates still look stable. I didn't see any changes in analyzing the collection rates. That's something we went through last year, and I kind of shared with those of you who were last year about where are we at. So again, the normal collections, as far as like who's delinquent, who's kind of behind in paying their tax bills, the district is still collecting that average of 97% of every dollar. So that's great. When it comes to the how much are we really collecting, because now there's all these exemptions of the enterprise zones, and then we have, which means just it's exempt entirely from tax, right? We can't levy on those
For years.
areas. And then we have the urban renewal agencies, and then we have just the usual compression. So when you take all those pieces into consideration, you're actually only collecting 92% on every dollar. So that's stable. It hasn't changed much from the prior year. What I did see is it is growing though in proportion. So this graph kind of shows, we see the blue bar. The blue bar is good. Like this, the blue bar is this is like, oh, this is our permanent rate. This is how things are growing as we take the permanent rate times assessed value, which is what we think we should be collecting. Well, the red bar is also growing in proportion with it. And that is that piece of, we are not able to collect these dollars due to compression, due to urban rural agencies, due to enterprise zones. So these are things that are happening at the local tax level that are impacting the district, unfortunately. I like to put these together because in my experience, public safety agencies, this is something they want to know. And sometimes it becomes a political topic when they're interacting with other politicians at the county level or other jurisdictions, cities who are considering urban rules, because then you have the opportunity with this information to say, yeah, we don't support this urban rule. Here is how it impacts us and our ability to serve you.
It increases our response, it increases the required personnel, generally statistically. Yet we get no tax dollars to increase our response, to increase our required personnel to respond to those incidents. So
Yeah.
that's historically, that's usually what happens.
Yeah, it's a very, very polarizing issue in local government, quite frankly. So, so it's something I like to bring to you all, just so you have information. So, and this is just a quick percentage amount slide, just to kind of give you an overall. If we looked at the expenditure comparison between the last adopted budget and this budget here today that we are discussing, this is how much in each of these expenditure categories that you're seeing changes, right? Again, it's the big decrease in the personnel that we expected because of the significant changes that were made. And that is specifically what is really helping get us back in line to have the carry forward and operating funds, that ending fund balance, beginning fund balance, so we can pay for operations from July through October. And then we've got our materials and service, a little bit of increase. We talked about inflation things. That's where that's kind of coming from. Capital outlay, that budget says it's a decrease, but I will tell you from a budget to actuals, it's a big decrease. So this is budget to budget comparison because that's what Oregon budget law wants us to do during this process. But if you were like, hey, Jimmy, I would like a financial report as of, mid-year, then you're going to see that during the course of this fiscal year, Jimmy's been telling people, no, you can't buy that. Like if you don't have the money.
A lot.
And he's been saying no and holding the line to kind of get the organization back on its feet and working with the board and working with admin. And so you're going to see like, well, we didn't spend any of that budget money, Crystal, last year. So why are you saying it's only a decrease of 75,000, right? Well, in reality, you had a capital budget last year of over $500,000 and didn't buy the ambulances. So I'm basically going through the process of rebudgeting for the ambulances to be purchased in this coming fiscal year. And then putting the numbers in that we had talked about, so a little bit of money for some repairs in some of the buildings, a little bit of money for some equipment, because there's some needs out there that can't really be delayed anymore. So I just wanted to kind of answer that in case that was a question in your mind of like, it doesn't really seem like that's the real change. This is fine. So we have 4 active funds for as far as accounting and budget purposes. There's a lot of funds that were out there before, again, that were created for accounting and budget purposes that are inactive. You'll see some pages in the budget detail that basically are blank in the proposed. Those are inactive funds. But they have to be reported until all the data rolls off the worksheet, because we have 6 columns and those are LB forms prescribed by the state of Oregon, and that's just what we have to do. So with this, we're going to kind of talk about some numbers for the general fund, move into a little bit of the detail. Still fairly high level, but a little bit of the detail. So the general fund, when you look at it as a whole, you look at the revenue piece first. The chart, the pie chart is there to give you an idea of what is the revenue sources, like how much is coming. But you like the numbers are one thing, the charts, some graphs sometimes give us a better feel for what does that mean. So we can see property taxes, again, most of the funding. It looks different from last year because suddenly now there is some beginning fund balance that is more significant from the past, which is great. So we see 18% there. And then we've got charges for services, and the other things are basically nothing, decimal dust as far as percentages go, right? So property tax is still the #1 revenue source, obviously. It's not going to change. When we talk about requirements, those are our expenses. That's the other side of the budget, right? It has to balance. We have these 2 worksheets. One says resources, one says requirements. They both have to be the same number. Those same numbers again at the end, the total is the same, the $13.8 million. But now we get to see how this is broken out. Well, personnel services is most of the costs. That's not surprising. That's actually very, very common in local government and public safety. So we see 73% there. And then we've got materials and services going on, and we've got some transfers and contingency, a new category. Yay, exciting. There's a new category of contingency. So a little sliver of dollars in there. That's great. Exciting. Okay, we'll move into the next one. We'll talk about the department view. So there are 2 ways the budget is presented in the detail in the expenditures, and that's just, it's required to be presented 2 different ways under Oregon law. One is just at this higher level of what's the total amount of personnel services, all of our payroll. What's the materials and service, what's capital outlay. The other one is by department. So these are the departments that admin had identified last year and said, this is how we see ourselves organized. And so our next slide is going to show that department level view of how do we spend dollars. So, and this is also in the detail, basically it's showing in admin, we have personnel services of 835,000 and change. And then, but in operations, which is where most of our staff should be, we've got $5.9 million of personnel there. And then when we look in the other training, it's just, again, it's just some costs for training materials and sending people to training. That's basically what's in there. And then we get into our little bit of personnel for EMS now, right? Because you've had the single roles.
Yes.
So we've got 1.3 million in there. Again, a little bit of materials and services that are directly related to those functions, like pharmaceuticals would be a great example for EMS. And then we get into fleet and facility. We have two staff members there. So that's why it's a very small number for personnel services. And then the bottom lines, well, I will say fleet and facilities, I will comment, the materials and service seems to exceed staff member costs significantly. And that is because we are paying for vehicle parts in there and utilities. And utilities are pretty hefty. That's I think we budgeted around $170,000.
Yes, for just
For all the
fuel and more
locations.
lubricants and yeah.
And then we have the fuel costs in there as well on top of that. So vehicle parts and fuel, that adds up. Debt service is very comparable to the prior year. I think it's different by maybe $1,000, totally minimal. Again, Jimmy pointed out, some of those payments are actually going to, we got like 2 more payments, and then some of the debt service will be smaller,
Fade away,
fade away, unless you have to enter into a new agreement to purchase something else.
which we might for an engine up to cheap, right, Chief?
Transfers to other funds. So that is a transfer out. What that $250,000 is, that is to fund the capital program. So we basically say, hey, we need $250,000 to put in the capital fund. We'll see that in a minute when we look at the capital fund. We're just moving it from one page to another page. The capital fund then is basically been funded then to be able to buy the ambulances that Jimmy has been talking about. I think with that, we can move into the next slide. This one, I really like this particular chart and graph, even though it looks very busy because I put percentages lines. The lines are percentages. The bar graphs, they're the red and the green. Those are actual the costs from a dollar perspective, right? So this is something that we were seeing that was problematic before, but now we get to see the course correct. And that's why it's important to highlight is when we look at the last couple of years here, when we see 2024 and 2025 in particular, we start to see real improvement and progress in this. So the 25 budget that is being proposed, we see the green, which is total taxes collected, is higher than personnel costs for the first time in I don't know how long of the district's history, but a very long time. And so that is what the district needs to see to be sustainable going forward. So this is the first budget where we're really starting to see that impact, that positive impact of getting that personal cost in line. In order for that the district to remain financially stable, it's really what you have to look at is your property tax that you're forecasting to come in has got to be in line or above. Like it cannot be flip-flop. We cannot have personal costs exceed property taxes. If you do, you're going right back to where it was before with like, we need a loan. So this is really exciting to see the trend and how it's correcting. So I wanted to highlight that for you all. Very exciting. So more on that topic, just along that line, you're going from what was an operating deficit to building reserves and building a beginning fund balance, and building a financially sustainable picture, which is really exciting. So when you have an operating deficit, that just is like that inverse of what I was just saying. It means that we have more costs than we have revenue coming in through the door. And that's what was happening in the past, right? And now we're seeing that flip, which is amazing. And so much progress has been made in such a short amount of time. It's just incredible. So last year, we were still projecting actually an operating deficit with the budget that was presented to the committee. There was a lot of concern and angst about that. And we were all like, yep, but these are the numbers we were asked to present. And we're like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of concern. But changes were made, things happened. The board's made some really great decisions. Management has made some great decisions. Here we are today presenting a budget that is balanced, structurally balanced, does not contain a deficit from an operating position. So I think that's really important. And the way to kind of keep that going and keep that momentum is hold the line. Just hold the line, keep it going, keep the momentum, make sure your personnel budget always stays in balance with that property tax revenue coming in, and you should be okay. It's like, that's your key thing to be monitoring there.
So I have a question about that. So that doesn't make sense to me as a metric to say that's your okay point. In the case of this organization, there's a substantial amount of revenue that comes in that's above and beyond property tax. That's service revenue and that sort of thing. And
$2 million. I
yeah,
don't call that substantial.
It's not, it doesn't pay.
when it's 20% of the budget, I mean,
It covers
it's
materials
substantial.
and services. though.
Only,
That's all it's gonna cover is materials and services, and an organization
That's the
this size
point.
has a lot.
That's the point. The materials and services are equally important to the personnel. The personnel can't do the job without the
Mhm.
materials and services.
Yeah.
So it feels kind of arbitrary to say property taxes should cover personnel costs. The whole thing has to be covered. So so I disagree.
Well, my point is that you can't have personnel costs be higher than property taxes.
Yes, you could. Yes, you
You
could.
don't
But then
have
you're
enough
risking
revenue.
jobs.
You don't have enough revenue to operate, if that's the case.
You're risking jobs that way too. Because
If your proportion of supplies and expenses was smaller and or if you had larger revenues from your service, then in fact you could. You could have a substantial portion. That isn't the case here.
No,
But
Yeah.
so it's kind of a bogus, it's an arbitrary metric to be looking at, in my humble opinion.
I respect your opinion. I will professionally disagree.
I've got a few more disagreement areas, so I'll come to those.
So looking at this, again, this is just a little bit of information on contingency funds. I actually have covered this significantly now, and I don't need to beat dead horse, so we'll just move on. Grants fund, I'm just highlighting the two other funds that are operating still here for the district, so you know that, hey, these are not inside the general fund. They truly are separate budget and accounting funds. Jimmy had mentioned, again, the only thing really left is that AFG grant. There's a little bit of money left to be claimed for training, is my understanding from conversations with you.
for
And
the blue
so,
card.
so we budgeted that revenue and those expenses, just so that can be accounted for. And again, so that should be neutral to the general fund, not have impact to it. And then this is the capital fund that we were talking about, where we're transferring in $250,000, so we're funding it from the general fund. And if you, for some reason, you don't spend the dollars on the ambulances that were discussed or anything else, what would happen is those dollars would just be reserved and saved for the next future fiscal year to then be discussed and deliberated upon to say, do we want to do it now? Do we want to make this capital purchase now? Or do we have some other equipment we need to buy? But I'm sure you all actually really do need the ambulances, and you probably will purchase that. And this is just a highlight. This is just a reminder, honestly, from last year. And that was just, these are kind of my long-term structural recommendations. You've all heard them before. They echo the same things that Rob Moody from Marina and Company came in and told the board, just really making sure that you have tools in place to make sure the organization is financially stable moving forward and continues to be stable. So I think it looks so much better than it did a year ago. That's awesome and really, really good. I'm looking forward to you all continuing to make that excellent progress that you've made. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the committee so the committee can either ask questions of staff or deliberate amongst yourselves and go forward with the process.
Well, I'll start off with, to your point, Mark, yes, if we were bringing in $10 million in this revenue, I get what you're saying, we could have more. So, but we don't. But yes, if we had more revenue coming in, it would offset that, yes, sir. So real quick, before you guys we start diving into your guys' questions. Again, this was born of a very short order. The department, if you guys saw the message at the very beginning, I was trying to be as positive as I possibly can. The department has changed dramatically in the last year. And we were I would say we were in a bad spot. And the reason why we're here today and we have this budget to present to you today is because of the collaboration with the board and with Local 3215 to find a solution to keep this department afloat and keep us moving down the road and responding to calls. That's it. It's not my plan. It's not Chief Sanchez's plan. It's not Krista's plan. It's ours, meaning everybody in this room and everybody in this district. So the fact that we actually have funds, we have not spent anything when it comes to, if you guys look in there now, we have equipment funds. We can actually we need to buy turnouts. Our turnouts are now getting to the point where they have about a 10-year lifespan and most of them are past the 5-year mark. So in order to do that, if we start purchasing turnouts now in groups over the next 4 years, we should be able to replace everybody's turnouts and have another set of turnouts because why? That's what our guy and gals use to
to go fight fires and go into hazardous environments. We didn't do that last year. Our hose is getting near the end of its life expectancy too. It's got about 5-6 years in, and hose has about a 10-year life expectancy. And so we got some stuff on a grant, SCBA's, there's a number of things. And so in order for this organization and market, to your point of having the tools for the crews to go out and be able to handle the calls, we got to still have some funds to be able to provide that equipment for them. This is the old days where guys grew beards and stuck it in their mouth after dipping in the water and run into a burning building. We have to wear SCBA's. We don't have horses. We have fire engines and ambulances. And our crews run they run 65% of the calls in the county. And because they run 65% of the calls, we don't have a hospital. Our frontline ambulances put 60,000 to 75,000 miles a year on the first 2 or 3 out ambulances we have. And even with the diesel, you guys realize that's only a couple of years before those things are falling apart and we've got to replace something else. So this is, I'm happy with the direction we're going. We still have a long ways to go. This is not, flip a coin, everything looks great and we're moving forward. The key is having the equipment and the supply for these guys to go out and handle the calls and be able to pay them and be able to have the equipment in the places for them to come back to at the end of the day. So again, I thank all you guys that showed up today to help out, because this is, I echo what Krista said. This is monumental. This wasn't a plan that was done by one person. It was a group that came together to hopefully move this place back towards the light. So thank you guys for that.
Are we supposed to pick a chair for the budget committee meeting?
Technically, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that way you can organize questions
Yeah.
and have someone sort of be like, okay, you go. No, okay, you go.
Who did it last year?
Chisholm, Mr.
Mark
Chisholm.
did.
Somebody else's turn this year.
Jared?
Who would like to be the chair? Anyone? Dan, you want to do it?
No, thanks.
Melissa?
I have some little voice that doesn't carry on.
Who was here last year? And I said somebody had been here.
Dan's been here for a number of years. Mark's been here a number of years. Melissa was here last year. So there are only 3 budget committee members that showed up today. So any one of those 3, if they would like to, I guess.
If not, then I'd say it defaults to.
Yeah.
Maybe.
The shoulders are getting heavy. Okay, well, let's open up questions. I mean, I guess, how do you, you guys have had more time to review this than obviously I have. But how would you guys like to move forward then? Questions? First question? Want to go page by page?
I have some general
Yeah.
input. I guess I was concerned when I saw the budget. Before I even go there, I'm gonna complain more. Okay, I'm concerned about the timing of the budget. I believe that this meeting should have been a month ago. On that, I believe that I should have gotten a copy of the budget on that maybe last Thursday on that, so that I had other than one night to go over it. It's difficult for me to do my due diligence if you don't give me any time to do that on that. And if we need to make changes because we discover something that's meaning, we don't have time to do a public notice and get the budget approved on a timely basis. So you really need to look at the calendar for next year to see that we get these in a better time frame. On that, the other thing that was really in the budget on that concerns me is last time we were down to as few firefighters as we are now. There was a couple things that happened on that. One, we had too much overtime. It burned guys out on that, and they lost their esprit de corps on that, which is a concern to me. The other thing is that I always like to refer to it as our hostile neighbors will steal our people on that. And if we don't compensate them adequately on that, there is a ready buyer for their services on that. So on that, we need to look at some of these things on that beyond. There's other factors. We don't live in a vacuum. And that was pretty much what I got on my orange crate for the moment.
What do you say about the losing personnel? I think that is a that is an industry standard across the board for every trade, every company, everybody. Being a business owner myself, I have, I have companies that call my foreman, hey, you do a good job. I'll pay you a little more over here. You know what I mean? But the goal, I think that for the district would be to ensure that the quality, like they don't have holes in their jeans, or they have all the equipment and stuff that they need, and they have a good environment there at the fire departments, right? You walk into some of those stations and they're old, like good Lord, they got, and I don't think they need to have marble bath, bath countertops and all that, but I mean, obviously I think we made the repair to the, to the fire station because they were leaking gray water all over the, from the showers. That's gross. So I think that we do need to, part of it is having that good environment, right? Because if people are happy, they're not going to want to leave. My guys are happy. They might get $1 or $2 more somewhere else, but that's that unknown,
No, 100%, Ryan, thank you. I think to the point, Dan, if we had the funds, I'd have 36 firefighters and 12 ambulances. We want all of our personnel. I want to provide them the best. As Ryan said, I want them to be happy here. Money only makes you happy for so much. So having a nice station, good equipment, and feeling like they're actually cared for, that is paramount. And that's got to be part of that budget as well, with making sure that we have those components that make their jobs a little easier. Firefighting is not an easy job. But ultimately, I would love to have more people. I would. And I believe we're on our way to working ourselves back to getting that, because I do agree. Guys will get burned out, and honestly, who's going to want to come to work if you're working 15 days a month?
The other point to that one is in the budget, we've obviously talked about the day cars, so that has increased, in the budget to allow for, so we're not having so much burnout. I think that the overtime, if I heard you correct, the overtime you budgeted for was last year's, right? So we're taking the 800,000 from last year. We're saying this is a reality, this is a known. So we're just going to plug that in over here. And hopefully the things we've done with our day cars and things like that has made it to where we're not going to use that.
That's in hopes, yes, but we can prove over the last 2 years through the forecasting and stuff, we can prove that we're pretty much dead on with the overtime. You can see it in payroll. So yes, that is the hope with these new, with Chief Smythe and the union. You got to give the union credit for this too, and sitting in those MOAs and getting the single rules on board and stuff. The hope is to bring the overtime down and these guys to be less burnt out as well, because I mean, the facts are, as a majority of our calls, 80% is EMS. So
no, I agree.
So we're adding the EMS component to help run our calls, while these guys are going to stay in district more. The chief helped, put together, sitting there with hours, weeks to put together for the fire service to continue to be here and ready to respond, versus a firefighter paramedic being important at the hospital. So,
oh, I totally agree. We just had a fire here last week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Or 2 days ago.
and then, 2 days ago, and we had firefighters here because the day car guys were doing their job. So I think it's.
No, I realize you don't want to make them too happy either, because then I have too many family leaves on that.
That's not a bad thing either.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
the Oregon paid family leave too, yeah, right?
So our personnel has been down a little bit for how many months now? I'm kind of new to this, but how many? I know like the office's admin's been down.
So since the first of the year.
Okay.
So we did have one battalion chief was going back down to the line. It wasn't for punitive. It was from financial. We laid off, unfortunately, our fire marshal, and that was the last of the staff. We had other staff went on to Chief Halsey is the chief of Lapine, and Chief Mendola is up in somewhere in Washington. And so some of that staff left that way as well. Since the first of the year, we have lost a number of personnel to those bigger departments. Fall Valley, Fort Wayne, Black Pants, whoever's hiring. And so those folks that left, the ones that are here, obviously we want to make them happy. I want them to be here. I want to be proud of the department they work for. And so again, I do thank, and it's not, I thank Dustin and Jim Polito and the E-Board working with us and having their union work with us to find how are we going to make this right. Because previously we had 36 firefighters. For the longest time, Columbia River Fire Rescue had 36 firefighters. Well, I can tell you on multiple calls where I'm standing throwing water balls out of fire because they're all on transports to Portland. And so with the model that was developed, having those paramedic unit cars running around transporting people to the hospital, frees up all hazard personnel to be available in town. In the fire we had 2 days ago, I had all fairgrounds, I had all St. Helens. Now, that doesn't mean that wouldn't happen if it'd been any other way, but that day we had firefighters there and they made a stop on somebody's home. They only lived there 2 months. And the guys kicked butt. I took them all to Dust Brothers because why? It was a heck of a stop. Within 5-10 minutes, they had the fire under control. And that's a testament to them having time to train and being available to actually be there for the fire.
So we've seen these numbers for 5 or 6 months then?
The current staffing model?
Yeah.
Yes, it's for the extra single roles though that are coming on, we're gonna see those numbers after July 1st.
Okay.
But the staffing model with the single roles going, and then we're at 27 now. We just got to 27
No, we're 20,
With
we're
Croft.
26.
with
and then
Croft back.
we have one kid in background.
Yeah.
The
The
thing
Croft
that-
came back.
yeah, Michelle Croft, one of our firefighters had gone to Vancouver and came back a week ago and said, will you hire me back? And yeah, we love Michelle and we hired her back. And we have one kid in backgrounds. The thing about hiring firefighters, these guys know, I can't just make them a firefighter today. So the background, the medical, getting them trained, even when we get these folks on, these single roles are quicker because they're already EMTs, already paramedics. So we just got to train them in one avenue. But to train somebody to be a paramedic and a firefighter, it could take 3, 4, 5 months before we can count them as part of the crew. So the individual that's getting ready to get started, he has little fire experience. He's a new paramedic, so it's going to be helping him become a better paramedic and teach him how to be a firefighter to get us back up to the staffing model that we developed.
Yeah. So my next question would be, it seems like morale at the department or at the admin building is pretty high. Like you guys seem like you're doing well,
Okay.
but is it sustainable? I mean, we've been doing it now for a little while, so we can tell. And then at the station level, like some of the guys volunteered the time to come in. Is morale doing okay? Like, are these numbers adequate?
So work in progress.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to count chicken before they hatch.
Yeah.
From the unit's perspective, we're trying every day to keep on a razor's edge, like Chief likes to say, we're on a razor's edge of going really bad or going really good. And everybody's working really hard to make sure we keep going forward. We'll see how this program sorts out as we get these people online.
Yeah.
And again, what's nice is in 8 months, and again, it's not about the MOAs, it's about coming up with a plan. And the plan is it's a living document, right? It's going to be, we may try it for 6 more months, but hey, this is not sustainable. We have to change directions. Obviously within the confines of the budget, but it's a collaboration. I can't emphasize it enough. Too many departments fight amongst themselves between union, admin, boards, all that stuff. We're the fire department. Our job is to go take people to the hospital, make sure their house doesn't burn down. That's what we do. Making sure those folks have the equipment to do it and the training and the expertise. That's our job. That's my job, is to make sure that they're happy and they have the equipment to go do the job.
Yeah.
And then hopefully that makes our customers happy. So.
And now we're doing this within the tax revenue. Personnel services is exceeding the tax revenue. We are no longer exceeding the tax revenue, and that is a huge change for the district. And that is the change in the right direction, which means that every year.
I'd like to say something to that.
Yeah.
So from a union perspective, to help maybe answer a couple questions, having the personnel, our paychecks, consistent with guaranteed tax revenue is something that we didn't have in the last budget, and some of us, some in this room, were facing maybe getting laid off because we were relying on ambulance revenue, other revenue we can't count on. And I've been in public safety for a long time, and I never worked somewhere where we relied on maybe going to have some money to employ somebody. So that was part of our union's push and working with the chiefs to say that if you are sitting here and your heart's beating, you're breathing air, your paycheck comes from guaranteed tax revenue. So you can buy a house, start a family, and that tax revenue only goes up as it goes down. So that's the union's perspective on it, on how we landed here, is we can tell our members, when we hire you here, you're here as long as you want to stay.
Yeah.
Because it's based on tax revenue and not ambulance revenue that we may or may not get. No one knows where that's gonna go. During COVID, it went down because transports went down. So when something like that happens again, revenue goes down. It hurts me to be able to tell our union members, hey, like, maybe transport that person, so hopefully you still have a job. It doesn't seem sustainable.
So, and to speak to Dustin's point, believe it or not, I was a firefighter at one time. And I was on a levy, and it was a 5-year levy, and they hired 9 of us. And being number 6 on that list, going, okay, a guy left, I moved up. Now I'm one step closer being on tax revenue. for 5 years. I didn't buy a house. We didn't want to have kids. I didn't want to do anything because I'm like, I could lose my job this coming budget year if the levy went away. And having that, at least, I won't, safety net, or at least the feeling of that the funds are there to cover their paycheck. So they can make those decisions, have children, like Dan said, have lots of children if they want, within the confines of their own personal budget. But at the end of the day, I didn't want that. I didn't want to see these guys on. I didn't want any of us on something that like next week we could falter and people are going away. So we know that with tax revenue, we can afford to pay salaries. If we don't buy an ambulance this year, I guess we don't buy an ambulance. We'll limp it along and we'll make it work. At least these guys know that their kids have got a roof over their head and food in their belly. All of us.
So it's necessary, but not sufficient. So I think it's a decent, easy to communicate metric. But you and I both know that this organization has commitments that it's got to make, even if there's nobody working for the firehouse, for the district. It's got a number of commitments it's got to make. And so to me, if I were saying, I want to be real conservative about this and go with the metric, I would want to add in those fixed costs that also have to be covered before salary. So this isn't sufficient to me. It's an okay step. It's kind of easy to communicate, but it's insufficient.
So,
And I'll just leave it at that.
so my question is, so you're saying that you should put the materials and services within the tax revenue and cut personnel?
I think that would be really stupid.
Well,
So
I'm
that isn't what
that's
I'm,
how you
that
explain
isn't
it.
what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that what you need to start out doing is building a budget that is not deficit spending. You've come really close to it this year, but you blew it by putting in a contingency amount. So you now have a statement that says, the most important fiscal metric for me to meet is a balanced budget where revenues and expenses match, and I no longer am eating into that fund balance. And that's what you've said. You said that in last year's budget document, and you had a huge budget deficit in last year's budget. You said it again this year, and you're allowing yourselves to put a $500,000 contingency in here and eat that away from your ending fund balance.
You know that doesn't get spent, right? Unless there's a resolution, right?
There are a lot of things I don't know because the reporting is really tough to read, I have to say. But that, I know that this is in the budget and it can be spent, and the language that was used was, we want to make it easy for the board to access if they need it. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to make it easy for the board to make a deficit spending year, another deficit spending year. And every deficit spending year shortens the life of this organization.
And Mark, we 100% agree with you on that. It's not, this is, as the things that we are outside of control of us, that's for, it gives our board pause. They can say, we're not going to spend it. They can absolutely do that. And we wouldn't recommend spending it. Again, I don't want to operate in deficit spending either. I would like to see our funds balanced out. It's going to take us several more cycles, but we will get to one where we have a balanced budget, where it's balanced and that we have all of our carryover and we don't have any of that. And then we can start building the contingency that we have every year that's above and beyond that. But I mean, to go from 500,000 last year to 2.9 million is a pretty big leap, and still make sure that I can pay these guys and then keep the trucks on the road. That's all, sir.
And
Just
the
trying
other,
to-
You
The other
guys
contingency.
made tremendous progress. I'm really impressed with the progress that you guys have made.
Yeah.
But, and when I look at the holes that were in last year's budget, I'm embarrassed. And so this is huge.
And Mark, to Dustin's point back there, that's what we've been, at every one of our meetings, we're talking about.
Yeah.
We're on a razor's edge. I would love to get us to where we're on a tightrope, maybe a 4x4 or 4x6, something where our feet aren't on actual razor. but actually get to where we can either fall to the good, we're gonna more likely fall to the good. I'd rather be weighted to fall into the positive than to fall into the negative. So 100%, I get what you're saying, and I would love to do it. Again, it's just something for the board. Should something catastrophic happen, we're not delving into personal services and payrolls. It is a money set aside. We don't want to spend it. If I had my way, half the stuff in here, we probably won't spend necessarily. We'll get what we need for these guys to operate, but we're gonna have to start building our stuff back up. So this is very small. It's baby steps. That's all. Just trying to get just 2 baby steps.
So basically the deficit that we're operating in a deficit, just so I understand.
We're not, this is a balanced budget.
This is not a balanced budget. This identifies a reduction in the fund balance of $500,000.
It was increased from last year's budget. to
By
this year.
Oregon law, it is a balanced
It
budget
is.
and contingency is an allowable category that if the committee does not want, you can strike it out and you can put it all in ending fund balance. However,
So,
let me finish.
yes, please.
I was made aware by staff that there are pending litigation items that are out of the board's control. This gives the board access should that pending litigation have to be paid and settled within the next fiscal year. Otherwise, to the chief's point, he's left with, now what do I do, Krista? Do I have to lay off some of these single role staff to pay pending litigation? So I created an easy way within budget law, within real funds that you do have for the board to be able to make those tough decisions, should it happen in this next fiscal year.
So what happens if we don't have to, like, say that payout, the pending litigation, that payout doesn't happen next year? What happens to that $500,000?
It rolls into your unappropriated fund balance next
Yeah.
year, and it gets even bigger.
Exactly.
So,
It grows.
It grows.
I just caution everybody to not talk too much about pending litigation
Yeah.
in a public meeting.
Seems right.
It's
That's
for
just
something unforeseen. It's
something I've done for
unforeseen.
It could
25
be, it could be an ambulance blowing up on the side of the road, literally from a catastrophic fire, which happened how many years ago when it got into an accident? We lost an entire ambulance.
That was a drunk driver.
Well, there's a drunk driver. A drunk driver hit our ambulance and totaled it. And there's a whole process that goes through that. And that means we would have no way to replace that without a contingency fund. Now, I want to remind you that last year we had a revolving line of credit that we were using as a contingency because this district did not have a contingency fund. We do not have access to a revolving line of credit at this time. We are still going after that. We have an audit presentation next month that will be put to the board. So we have to redo that because of things that occurred. That revolving line of credit is not there anymore, but we're going back to get that. So there is no other way for us to deal with any surprise outside of this contingency.
so let me ask you a different way. So basically the $500,000 that's in question, that's basically, so we have our checking account and we have our savings account.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And
Yep.
we got this money
It's
over here.
all
It's
cash.
accounted for.
It's all cash. Yeah.
It's just in the savings account.
Correct. Correct. And if you choose not to spend it, excellent, it is still there.
And the chief can't go be like, I'm spending $500,000.
Yeah, I
We
can't
have to bring that to you and it has to be considered by the board.
Yeah.
Publicly.
Only board can make
Yeah,
that.
we used to have contingency. We had a water tank failure on
Exactly.
a water tender once.
Mhm.
And we dipped in the contingency, had the emergency clause and repair it. We had the medic crash. There's been times in the past, we used to have contingency.
And
We
we
used to have
need that,
reserve.
and we need that again. And God forbid, I mean, we don't want something bad to
And
happen.
again, the board knows, and I apologize to the committee because you guys aren't at the board meetings, right? So our goal is we got an audit report coming to you guys next month. The other one will probably be in September-ish, maybe around there. We're finally caught up. We then now can go seek that line of credit if we needed somewhere an ambulance got taken out or a water tank failed in a water tender. At that point, that 500,000 will get left in there and get rolled over into the unappropriated fund balance next year. So we're only doing this because we don't have anything right now. But I don't want to say I'm going to get it until I know I have it, right? You don't start putting on the bib and get the knife and the fork out to eat when the food's not on the table yet. We want to make sure we have that stuff. We just want to have it set. It's in the microwave, right? I know it's over there. I don't want to eat that. I'd rather cook something better. Sorry, because you know these I mean, but that's the only reason why we're doing this. We don't want to. We don't. And ultimately, my goal would be to leave it in there. And if maybe with Krista's conservative at 91, maybe we come in at 92 or 93%. And now we have 3 million and some change at the end of next year for the appropriated fund balance. We're moving back towards that. As you said, sir, where we don't have that. Now I can build a contingency that's over here for bad days, and then we have money to carry us for July to November.
So that money's in savings right now. How much do we have in savings? I looked through most of this, I don't remember
So-
the number.
Quote unquote savings, we don't have like,
Yeah, there's no savings.
there's no savings.
Okay.
So, when people look at this, they think that there's a lot of different accounts, like there's an account here, account there, and a savings account there. There's not. So there's the fund, and then we separate it in our budget document by funds. So we're running out of, if we're going over actual bank accounts, we have one, two, three,
Couple,
five. We have 5 bank accounts. But we do mainly, we function out of 2. We have operating and we have payroll. And that's where we're functioning out of. Well, that is going to be consolidated even more to make it easier for everybody to see as well. But this was not from my doing, this is past. It's been sitting right now. We're waiting. Things are still being looked at. And then that will be consolidated. So the fund, when we set it aside, that means that money is earmarked. It's like bouncing your check.
But it is money in the bank.
Yes, it is money in the bank.
There was over
Is it actually in the bank or is it the state's investment fund?
It's, well, we keep everything in the LGIP as long as possible. So
We get interest.
yes, so we get interest. So what will happen is like when you get your $8 million in November.
I think you need to explain that to them on that it's.
Oh, no problem.
This is,
So you understand.
Yeah, I know what it is on that,
Yeah,
but I don't think that they do.
So the LGIP, we get our tax money in there. That's where we get, it's an investment account. So we keep that in there. So say at the end of the month, we'll round numbers. Say at the end of the month, we have to do $500,000 in payroll. We take out what we need in payroll. The object is to keep every dollar in the LGIP account as long as possible, even up to where I pull it only 3 days before payroll to make sure it transfers. But that way we gain the most interest at the end of the year.
It's local government investment program. It's not,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not just a brokerage account that
Yeah.
Smith Barney on that.
It's not
that
invested in
they're-
Amazon.
They're
and Bitcoin.
managing
Yeah.
on it, yeah.
It's a state required account, and currently it is doing better than pretty much any CD you can go buy on the
Yes.
market. We're been around 5.25% for a while now. I mean, the feds are saying that they will cut rates. So those awesome interest earnings may shrink
Yes.
over the next fiscal year, which is why the interest income, we just kind of projected a flat 80,000. If more interest comes in, wonderful. But we didn't want to get carried away with knowing that there's potential cuts on the horizon, which does influence the local investment. So, yeah.
So question. So fine, it's not in a savings account, but the answer to your question was $2.9 million is what they're projecting is the Indian fund balance. And so
Yeah.
that's the money available.
Yes.
So the question is, between July 1st and October 31st, what's the spending?
What do you mean, what's the spending?
How much are you going to spend between when you have basically a period of time? Yeah.
Roughly.
Is the $3 million, is
Yeah.
the $3 million going to cover your
So
spending
we are,
needs?
we are
between-
looking in to come in like right on the wire. There is a chance that we are going to have to, just like we did last year, to search for a line of credit for October as of right now, yes. But that deficit that was before is smaller now because of the cuts and everything we did this last year.
Okay,
Unfortunately, we
So-
couldn't do it overnight.
so the Chicken Little stuff about we have no line of credit is just Chicken Little stuff. There
What do you-
is money that can be accessed. It's not
No.
easy. It takes a
No,
lot of work.
No, we do not have.
we
a line
have
of credit.
funds up.
No, you don't have anything lined up in terms of a line of credit. I got that. But you figured out how to borrow money to make ends meet last year. You can do it again this year. So I'm not understanding what your issue is.
That was a monumental task. We had to go through
Right.
because of what happened. No, before we had one, that was done. And then we had to go through the county tax assessor and have them pay it first. We never even got to see, which is not a normal business. That's not a normal practice with
Right.
nonprofits. with
There's
government.
work to do. I got
So,
it.
and I was able to take care of that and get that done
Yeah.
with some working with the county and working with the US Bank. However, that was a one-time deal. They did not agree to do that again.
Right.
So now this year, we are going to be looking for something else. Yes. And that, the nice thing too, is we have a completed audit now. Because as you know, this district was behind on audits. So yes, we are looking for it. Are we confident? Are we excited about finding something and getting something with somebody and having the land that we were able to acquire to use and hold up as collateral, yes. But would I sit here and say it's a done deal? No, that would not be a fair thing to say.
So there's work to do to make it
Yes, sir.
happen,
Yes,
but
yes, sir.
you'll make it happen. I'm not worried about. You made it happen last year through lots of heavy lifting. I understand. I don't want to minimize the amount of work, but we're still in a predicament this year, very likely, where we'll have to do some borrowing to cover, because this ending fund balance is not adequate to
Correct.
guarantee that we don't have to borrow money. See, I want the messages to be really clear this year. Last year, they were obscured. And I want them clear this year, so we understand what it is we're approving as a budget committee. And so that's helpful.
But Mark.
So
one-
we
one-
said that
one
we were
second.
gonna go 5 years.
So one other thing, Mark, too, is
Yeah.
from July to November, right? We do, their payroll, we do payroll and whatever fuel, by
Yeah.
Band-Aids, whatever those guys need to make it work for the next 4 months. We're not gonna go buy new heart monitors. We're not gonna go buy a new ambulance. So all those things you see in the budget, we never do until after the fact. So it is just
Yeah.
basically the bare minimum, because we're trying to make us limp through October. That's our goal.
So just so I'm clear as well, this is my first year on the board. So the money that we're operating on right now that's gonna carry us on to November 1st was
Yes.
last year's budget, right? This is all last year's money. We're still kind of holding on and waiting, because July 1st, we adopt this new budget. We still have, we're not getting no money yet, right?
Exactly.
So our paycheck
Exactly.
hasn't hit yet.
So
Not till
So we're
November.
still waiting for
You're
October.
still
Okay.
waiting for money.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going off of last year's budget
Yeah, we're-
still, right?
The remainder of last year's budget.
Yeah.
So this is for the following year that you're questioning.
No, it's for this year,
Well, how
it's for
do
the
we-
coming year. It's for July 1st. So
But
As of July
we haven't
1st.
got our paycheck yet, though.
no, as of July 1st, we'll end the year, according to the current
Yeah.
projection,
Yes.
with $2.9 million
Yes,
in the
sir.
bank.
Mhm.
And the budget, this year's budget said we were gonna end the year with $500,000 in the bank.
We'll be
spending off that 2.9.
We,
To get through.
we're gonna,
Yeah.
we're gonna,
Yeah,
end
just
if
to
we'd
clarify.
ended up with the $500,000 that was in this budget, this place would have had to close down.
We'd be
Absolutely.
closing, we'd be.
Well, we know
closing
that. We
July.
were-
You guys did a terrific job at
Yeah.
bringing it back, breathing life back into things. You guys,
Yeah.
so
Definitely.
anyway.
So Ryan, to even clarify, so yeah, that we are, so even as this budget, at the end of this budget on June 30th of 25, there should be 2.9 or 3 million or whatever amount we have that will now carry us into the 25-26 budget.
Mhm.
So yes, the whole point is we're trying to build up that, we call it, I've heard cash carry forward, right, Rick? That's what
Cash carryover.
cash carryover, the unappropriated fund balance, all these different terms, but basically it's that money that, there's departments that might be borrowing money in August to make that. Our goal is not to do that because we have to pay that money back
Right.
with interest.
And there was a history of the TANs and everything in borrowing before, and we've made huge strides at bringing that forward with that extra 1.1 million in the personnel services. So we are making that smaller. That gap where we need to borrow money, that gap is already much smaller now. So that has been a huge success this year.
Yeah, it really has.
Well, and I remember Roy Harry talking, or not Roy Harry, Rick Palmer talking about down the road, if we build up a reserve fund, an apparatus, we can actually borrow against that as a TAN if we need to with the
Correct.
board's approval. That's money in the bank that we could use if we needed to reallocate if we needed to for something that we would pay back. So.
So one of the things that was in in the current budget, because we're still in the current budget, right, for 23-24,
Mhm.
was confirming the property we own down here on South Ninth.
Mhm.
So that property is the judge assigned it, it's Columbia River Fire and Rescue's property. We're going to use that. So when we go look for that loan, sir, I can say, we got 6.8 acres here, and then we have something that very tangible, right? Versus going and doing what's the one you call it when you go to the bank? It's
Unsecured.
unsecured, thank you, unsecured loan. No, we have land. No, and we're gonna pay it back, and they're not, we've already talked to several banks, not just the ones we currently work with. So are we confident? We think we're gonna get that, yes, we want it, just in case we don't slide in on the nose, like Chief Sanchez says, we were $100,000, I don't want to be $100,000 short, and I can't make payroll. So we'd probably borrow, and if we don't, like last time, we borrowed 650,000 last year. We didn't use all 650,000. So basically when it came back and it got paid, we already had a third of it or half of it was still in there and it just went back to them. But we'd rather be to the good, ensuring that our guys are gonna get their payroll, and then we have gas in the ambulances and water in the fire engine, so.
All good stuff.
Okay, well, are we good there, Mark? Any questions?
Yeah.
On that? Okay.
Another thing that would be helpful, and I've asked for it numerous times, and I've had my requests ignored. And fortunately, today I actually did get a response from the chief, and I appreciate it. But one thing that I'm not a government guy. I'm a business guy, and so I like to, rather than doing all of these prior year budgets where the budget doesn't have anything to do with what actually happened, I like to look at actuals or estimates and compare. So this, for example, if we're looking budget to budget, it looks like a gigantic cut in personnel costs year over year. And I suspect that but I don't know because I can't see it, that the personnel costs, for example, are way under budget this year in 2024. And so I don't know whether we're growing or shrinking personnel costs next year.
Are you on page 46?
Yeah.
So,
I'm on page 29.
but if you were in the budget message too, we directly spoke about that with the 16 FTE. So that's the, the admin being, we no longer have a training chief. We no longer have a fire marshal.
I got all that.
So that's where your personnel services is going.
Yeah, I got that. What are the numbers though?
So right now,
Budget versus
What
actual.
do we spend? What are we gonna spend this year?
On personnel, go all the way to
Yeah, on
85.
personnel.
85
On 85 what?
page.
85.
You want to see exactly what we're going to spend on personnel? You can go to the very
Okay, let's see, my packet goes to page 40 something, I think.
Are you talking about this fiscal year?
That's usually, yeah, that's what I've asked about a number of times.
Oh, so you're talking about future. We can
I'm
put
not
that
having
together.
page
So-
85.
There is no page 85.
Oh, sorry.
Uh,
You should.
It stopped, page numbering stopped at 84.
Yeah,
So you quote back of 83.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Got a pick on page 42.
It might be, it's 85 in here, but, here you go. This is your personnel services cost moving forward.
Yeah.
That's
83,
projected for this year.
So, sorry, 86 on the PDF.
86.
I don't have anything
So
to do
it's,
with
I'm sorry, it's 84 for the actual number.
Yeah, on the back of page 83.
Yes.
that. I
Go off, I'm
agree with, what's the gentleman guy?
Yeah.
Can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Dan.
Yeah.
Sorry about
Yeah, Dan's totally
I
correct.
do agree. I think that, just the questions and things like that, to be better prepared, if we can get it out sooner next year, so these guys can have
Yeah,
questions.
That is
reach
our,
out to
that
you
is our
guys,
plan.
Right? So we're not doing this in a public forum and they can make phone calls and call, right? We can keep it.
And have them
you know what I
answered.
mean?
And have
I-
the questions
that's
answered. Have the calls
That's a
answered.
foregone conclusion.
So again, I wasn't in control last year, so I'm in control of this one. This one was, again, with audits that were being done and several things we have going on. This is why we're late this year. Next, well, I feel like I'm with you, Dan. I would have loved to see this sooner. So our goal is to have it out sooner next year and have more meetings in May, early May, so you guys have a chance to review it. And yes, and so a budget.
How
and-
often does the budget committee meet? Once a year.
Once a year. And the next year, we're gonna have all the audits done and these will be audited figures, because you see the other figures that are on the budget for $16+ million. You do the cash flow and you look back, we didn't have that money. And that was proven by Marina and Co. and what you guys paid for their forensic audit and
Yes,
stuff.
I get it. We
So-
can go backwards. We can
No,
only-
I'm saying moving forward. So next year, we're gonna be able to do this a lot sooner because we're gonna have audited figures. You're gonna have budgeted versus actuals, and it will be absolutely be able to easily present all of this to everybody. That's what we're
Great.
getting at.
Great. It'd be nice to hear that when I ask the questions, by the way. Rather than having my emails just fall to silence, it'd be nice to get them answered. I gotta tell you that.
You've been getting your stuff answered.
I didn't get answers.
You got answers today too on the phone. You got an email and then within.
I got
That's fine.
answers
That's
from the
fine. Let's keep
chief.
it- Guys, hey,
And I'm,
no, I called, right,
No,
Mark,
I'm
I
really-
talked, we
I'm-
talked,
I'm
so
hot about
Yeah.
it, obviously.
I understand. Well, so give me a chance to bring it back, right? And I did call you today, so Again, the goal is to bring us back to where we should be having more meetings. You got a question, call up, come down, I'll buy you a cup of coffee if you want. I'll go over whatever you want to go over. I wasn't in control. I didn't have it last year. So
On page 40.
yeah, I'm on page 42. Just waiting for Austin to, when he got a chance.
I think I'm actually more on 46. It's gonna be under the admin, but I think, so I see we've got, so it's under the administration. So last year personnel service was 902, 120. This year's at 835, 120. And was that with the amount of chiefs? And then kind of like my main thing is I see dues and membership. I wasn't sure exactly what that covers, but that went up 30,000. And then like legal services, is that like all of this year is expecting?
Yeah, everything we're expecting this year, yes.
And then, so, okay.
We're hoping that, so I mean, Rick knows, Rick was here long, we used to not spend $350,000 on legal. So it'd really like to be nice to get back down below 100,000 on legal. But obviously with the things we have going on, we have to. So at some point, hopefully that number is going to drop and drop substantially, but we have to get through a couple things that are going on. So yes, unfortunately, we did budget for that.
We have a
Dues and
guaranteed
memberships,
125 deductible.
That's everything.
That's like our.
That's your
Image trend and all that.
image trend, crew sense, the paramedic certs, EMT certs, EMR, pretty much everything that we have.
Right.
Ambulances, yeah.
I understand it's a research year.
Yes,
It is a
So
research
it's
year.
gonna be higher
Yeah, it's the biennium.
than the prior year. So that one will vary year to year.
That was that question.
Yeah, very good question. And yes, your admin is going to be less because you were down a chief.
Yes,
So
we're down to
it's
2
the fire
chiefs.
marshal.
Yeah, fire marshal and division chief of training are no longer there as well.
Mhm.
And so what was you said, what was our overtime rate this year? Do you know how much we paid this year?
With this month, we're over $700,000. So
Yeah.
with this, payroll's almost done this month. So we're
I
gonna,
think it was,
last month was 94,000 in overtime.
Okay, so it's about 80,000 every year.
No.
Or
800.
About 800, yes. And then with the PERS, the PERS contributions.
yeah, because I think the last report I had looked at, it was like
702.
7 or
So I see EMS on the page 48. EMS, under their overtime last year was adopted for 100,000. This year is only 25,000. And then for the fire operations, last year was at 650. This year's at 750.
You're on this page 40.
Kind of balance between 46 and 48. So I'm just saying on the fire operations, I see
Yeah.
750 this year.
Mhm.
And then EMS overtime is set at 200 or 25,000.
It was reallocated just because of the staffing changes.
Okay,
So we'll put more into the operations because that's where overtime is expected to occur. And then with the new staffing model on the EMS side,
Yeah.
not expecting to see as much, but if it needs to shift between categories, that is okay.
do we have, what is the deal with the union on fill it like if EMS personnel are off, is that figured out? Like overtime?
Yeah, David Parshall worked yesterday for one of our EMS only guys. So yeah, we to keep the day car up as part of the MOAs that we have with local 3015. Yes, firefighters can work down to cover the ambulance.
Got it. And is it working down or is it still working within their capacity?
They get paid what they're.
Well,
they
David,
get
David
paid-
got
they
to put
get
on his
paid,
gear
yeah.
yesterday, right? David, the fire we had the other day, David got to, he put out a fire for me. with
So
the
that
water
overtime would come out of the fire operations.
He gets paid,
How do you do?
he gets
Good job.
paid at his rate.
Yeah. I just making sure. his
Yeah,
level.
if
Yes,
they're
no,
firefighter,
we can't,
they
we
Next
cannot.
phase of that overtime.
Yes.
We cannot.
No,
cannot.
absolutely. That was.
Yeah.
that was-
You're not a firefighter today. We can't do that. Yeah.
No, I was making sure they could work. up.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's part of the MOA to make sure that the day car is up because that is what's keeping our folks in town for fires and car accidents is having that day car. So if that means a firefighter EMTs or a firefighter medic's got to drive for one of them, then that's what we're doing.
While we're there at page 48, I had, on the EMS stuff, I had a couple of things that really drew my attention on that. One of them, on that kind of every place except for here, the employer paid taxes is about 10% of payroll. On there, here it's only about 8%. I didn't understand why it was that low. Seems like it
On
should
page
be
48.
on page 48, yes.
See about the third line down.
So here you're talking about the 59,990.
Yes, on that. See, I'm thinking that should be more like 76,000.
What we do, so what we do is if we had to take on taxes and all the federal laws and everything like that, we use this program called Paycor, which may or may not be everybody's favorite, but they manage the taxes portion of it. But I can definitely look into this for you more. So that's the numbers we're getting.
The payroll taxes should be on there pretty similar for everybody. And so if we look in fire operations on it, we got 3 million base salaries, we got 327,000 of payroll taxes. On that, and
Closer to
every place you look
10%.
at, like say, payroll taxes are about 10% except for there. That's
Except for which one again? Which one was low?
40.
Page 48.
Talking about right here.
on the EMS payroll taxes.
Yeah.
So average salary, but the percentage should be the same. I know they're paid less, but yeah, I'll look into it for you and get you an answer.
We know
Yeah.
Social Security is 7.5%.
You do, yeah.
We got some federal unemployment, we got some state unemployment.
Make sure we get.
And that we've got this, okay, and, you know, in the message, you talked about the medical
Yeah.
insurance being 6-7%, but here under the EMS, it was 142.9 budget last year, 280 this year.
So, well, the medical, yeah, the new positions. So we added 8 new positions. So there's 8 total single roles. And before there was not. We had 4. We had 4 really. So now we added 4 more. So that's why it's increased. The increase of the medical insurance too is 6.75%. Plus, depending, what we do is we have to budget that we are assuming that they're coming in with a full family, which that increase is $2,500 and change per person for a full family is what we pay for medical insurance a month, per month.
That's a great explanation because
Yeah.
it will not trend
Yeah.
at the 6.75% when we budget new positions because we're budgeting at the highest rate for medical.
Because we have to assume that they're coming in with a,
Yeah.
you know, a
So it's
partner.
gonna
Family
look
rate
way
on
high.
insurance instead of single rate.
It's
Yeah.
use it.
If we get a single rate, we save some money that year, but
Yeah.
Those came to my
that
attention.
was great though.
They jumped out at me.
Yeah, we'll definitely look at that one with the payroll
Yeah.
taxes.
With
That makes me. a
The
little-
question I sent you guys earlier, is that in this budget, or did you guys take that out, the admin, that 3.5 positions, but it was budgeted for 4? Remember that email you answered?
Yes, I answered you with that email. And you said the end.
I think that was 85,
Yeah, when you're looking at
but
the
it's,
NC,
I don't see it in here, so I wasn't sure.
yeah. You're talking about this page, right?
Scroll.
Yeah, because the admin right here for 3.5.
Mhm.
So your
Yeah.
fire chief, there is no deputy
83.
chief anymore. We have, we're missing, what happens is where you might be kind of confused is the division chief EMS is down here.
83.
So your division chief EMS is in the EMS version. So I think that might be where there's a little bit of a confusion.
Yeah, it was on page 85, shows 3.5 employees on the budget page,
Yeah.
and then 86 shows 4. So it's just Chief Cole is in a different
And
section.
if,
He's in the EMS.
and if Chief Gorsuch was still here, he'd be under training. He'd
Yeah.
be the chief
He's
in
in
training.
training.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you guys said that was actually going to be
It's the-
annually duty coverage, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was the typo, the one that said annual that you asked, that was the typo, that's duty coverage.
On page 46, under professional services on that, this year we budgeted 50,000 and 25,000.
Which one?
That
Professional.
sounds like admin.
Yeah,
Right.
professional services, the 20-6106 account.
So that there's more than one audit that has to be completed this year, and the audit fees are substantially higher than what they were in the past with the new audit firm. So Jimmy had to budget for 2 audits within 1 fiscal year, which is twice, that's double. And then he unfortunately has to pay me too. Plus some other professionals along the way. So it is higher.
So we're paying for 3 audits instead of 1 essentially.
Yeah, well, and then after the shock and legal services on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, why do we need all these others too?
The audit will go down to 1 a year. It's just unfortunately the district is playing catch up. So
How much are they charging you per year? Are they 25?
over 25, yeah. a
Yeah, I
little
was gonna say, it's usually 25 grand nowadays for an audit. So it's pretty standard.
No. One kind of nitpicky one on that, but on that, with page 49 on the materials and services, vehicle maintenance, parts. Budgeted last year, 140,000. This year budgeted 60,000.
Yeah, the budget last year
Gonna
was,
have breakdowns this year.
no, the budget last year was way off. Yeah, there was a request from former Chief Medina to like ask for a higher level.
Those
And so
were
that
things
was
that
worked
jumped out
into the
at me.
budget, but the actuals do not support it.
But you can see it the year 2023.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So we're lining it back up with actuals because those preceding columns. So remember, there's only one column that is budget to budget. The other preceding years, that's actual cost, right? And so
What they
when you look across, you want to see does it line up with actual costs.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So now we're able
So
to,
readjusting,
through
recalibrating.
reconciling.
40,000 sounds more. Right.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah. 45.
And it's supported by documentation.
For which one, Rick?
I was just clearing up.
Who's asking me about the parts?
Oh, yeah.
What's the difference with district versus contract? That's us billing or?
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
outside
we do.
district.
There is a markup.
billing
It's
that-
pretty standard
Yep.
markup, same thing that everybody else marks their stuff up.
Yeah. Yeah, it was separated, so parts they bought for outside agencies is in a separate account.
Exactly.
Yep. What were you last? These are great questions. What were you last year?
So you obviously have where we're at on our budget line items for this year to
Mhm.
build this budget. Can we get a copy of those at some point?
You're welcome to come in and we can.
Or I'll bring it up.
Yeah.
I did talk, I asked, since Paul's up at the Rainier end too, Rick, that we can, I can meet you up there. We can bring it up to you. So you can.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's there. We talk more about a day that you get together, chief as a basis.
Okay.
Clearly, there were things on last year's budget that just like,
Krista said,
Kristen was just talking about that was not, it didn't match. And then our point was I hate the word transparent because everybody throws it around so easily. I don't like it. But the fact is this, you guys have to be able to see, we have to be able to see, the guys have to be able to see, public's got to be able to see. And so we're making this as realistic and relevant as possible. So if we're going to buy some equipment, we'll buy some equipment. If we don't, then it's going to roll over to next year's budget. But ultimately, the goal is to ensure that our folks have the equipment they need to go out and take care of the calls. And it's one of those things. And so there was a bunch of stuff that was goofy last year, and that's why there's some changes this year, because we had to make it actually correct.
And there's been a lot of bookkeeping that's been going on in reconciling, so we're able to make a proper forecast. So, because the financial software, unfortunately, that we had was not, and Krista can attest to this on her team, and Marina, Moody, the people that you guys brought in to also look, because there was too much confusion. The financial software was not being utilized. So there was no way other than just looking at the bank statements. The same thing with the audit. They did a modified cash basis audit because the records are just not there. So now, because we've been so transparent, we've been putting stuff where it needs to go in the software and reconciling those books, we're getting these accurate numbers. So that's why you're going to see some of these changes. So we're confident when I give this to you, I'm confident to say, hey, this is what we're paying. The receipts support this.
And we'll start to see that in budget versus
Correct.
actual.
Yeah.
Monthly report.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And now you're going to have it, we'll be able to have that monthly.
That's what I
That's
expect.
the deal,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and just think, and again, the budget versus actuals, again, what we want you guys to see, we want them to see, we need to see it, because it's also gonna be like, you'll know in March where we're at. So when we start building the budget for 25, 26, you're like, oh, I know exactly where we're at because we have that data. We didn't have it before,
We had
because
to
they
go
were not
back
using,
years.
the software was not being utilized. So people were just,
So I have
whatever they were
another,
doing.
then I have another point for the budget committee. Do you think it's beneficial for the budget committee to be getting the budget versus actuals emailed to you guys every month? Try to track, because you guys.
I'd like to see it in a board pack or email, one or the other.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would,
Well, we're making expense decisions on items that are being presented to us to promote, to approve to pay. And we know if there's money in the budget for it. We're taking their word for it, but I want to see it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and that's
I
what we're
would-
gonna get.
Just that they're included in the board packet.
Yeah,
And
that's normally how it is, the
board
board
packets
packet.
Should be posted online and available to the public.
I agree, but I think also
They are.
for ease, right? Ease and just sometimes, because I'll be the first one to say that I have 2 emails, right? I have 3. I have my personal that I never use, I have my work, and then I have the CRFR. And that's a lot of time. So if it's in the forefront, you know what I
It is
mean?
nice
Then
to have
there's
it that
also, there's no excuse either. You can't say, oh, I didn't see it. Well, it was provided for you guys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everybody. And I'm fair is fair,
Mhm.
you know?
Like,
And I
great
think that would
idea.
be, right? And then also then there's some of the questions like, hey, why did this happen, right? Like, why'd you spend so much money in the budget for training? Well, we had to buy this thing. It cost 80 grand and now we only have 20, but we don't have to buy anything else crazy.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it was a thought out process, you know?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And now it's gonna be there because of the work that we were partnering with them and everything, reconciling the books, like the software wasn't done, the audit being done, so now we'll be confident giving you those numbers, those will be real numbers. So that was what we worked towards and that's what we got.
Where does it show the funding for the ambulances? that we're gonna
Under
purchase?
capital.
The capital fund, so it's.
Just towards the end of the packet.
Yeah, at the end of the packet, it's Fund 10, so it's way in the back.
81 maybe?
Um,
Yeah, 80.
So that's the 395
That sounds right.
for capital outlay or?
Mhm. Gonna be capital outlay.
And does that include, like, are we gonna need new life packs for those or additional life packs?
It'd be a replacement of the.
Okay, so we're just, with the additional EMS staffing, we're not gonna have to increase our number.
No, so like at Fern Hill, that's where, I call Fern Hills where we send things to die. And so we have an ambulance up there that's got 400,000 miles. It could still function in.
It's a reserve.
It's a reserve. So as we get something new, everything just gets kicked that way. That one will get sold and then the next oldest one will sit up there. It doesn't have equipment in it. But if one of our ambulances, like the one that got hit, got taken out, we could then put that other ambulance back in service for a short period of time until at such times we get one because there used to be tons of manufacturers, Rick knows. Now there's like 2 or 3 that make ambulances. There's maybe 4 or 5 engine companies. There's no one used to be dozens. And so trying to get that back. So yes, we don't get rid of our oldest one, but it doesn't have any equipment on it. So we'd have to transfer equipment to make it work.
So my question is, with the additional day car personnel, are we increasing the number of ambulances since we're increasing the number of day car personnel? Are we keeping the exact same number of ambulances? We're just rotating.
We're rotating.
Okay.
Because, and right now, we feel confident with the data, and we've shared this with 3215 sitting there. 2 day cars being up, and they're at the peak. And I apologize, I will send it to everybody. I'll show you our bell curve. Our bell curve starts around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning, and goes about 10 o'clock at night. And so, but we do get calls after midnight. Those calls after midnight take the fire crews to Portland. And so by having these 2 day cars, one from 7 a.m. to 7 p., they're catching those morning calls, which is now not having our guys miss going home. And that afternoon car is picking up that midnight call where our guys are at least getting 3 or 4 or 5 hours of sleep so that they are ready. So there's a very narrow window from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. where our fire crews are on the calls. So yes, during the day, our ambulances, we have the same number of ambulances, we're rotating them through.
This is really off the topic on it, but it just wandered through my mind. And I said,
all good, Dan.
yeah, how strange my mind is. Are you under any kind of mandates to convert to electric vehicles?
No, not yet,
No, thank God.
not yet.
No.
I just popped in my mind, are you
Yeah.
gonna put any?
Well, what we do is we'd have an electric ambulance and I'd have a truck with a diesel generator on the back.
Well,
And
it-
again, our guys would run too many calls. They'd never charge. So
I think, are there some Oregon mandates coming down like 3035 or 2035 or something like that? Or-
Well,
they keep saying that, but when they cross that bridge, so Portland did buy, they were very expensive electric
Pierce
engine
Volterra.
Ridiculous.
and it doesn't
Weed
work.
eaters and
Yeah.
blowers.
No, they bought a fire engine, 100%
okay.
electric fire
It's
engine,
not working.
and it's not working.
Yeah,
So,
they're doing the same thing with all their.
and it was over a million,
lawnmowers and everything.
correct.
Yeah.
Um,
It's not working.
No.
One more question.
Good.
On the personnel cost, this form, so on that, what do you guys call this? Duty coverage.
Yeah.
It's got the 127,752. And then the total benefits, so that's for when you
Per
guys are
tax.
running. Okay, so that's
Yeah.
for when you guys, and does that include the hours that you guys are, is it hourly or is it just a stipend or? how's that work?
It's a stipend, and it is less than minimum wage.
I saw it,
Yeah,
I did the math, it's like something a day, 300
Yeah.
bucks or 200 bucks a day.
by at 14 something an hour, and then it just, like this week alone, I'm over 200 hours this week. So it's not, this is not ideal for us. Me. Thank you, Goose. Yeah, so, but at the end of the day, it's about keeping these guys butts in the seats, and I need to hire more firefighters. We will find a way to get through it. But ultimately, we're gonna need some more staff at some point, but not until our fire staff and our EMS staff's up to a level that we're handling all our calls easily.
So,
Maybe not easily is the wrong word, but yeah, effectively.
so simple math, if you look at the 3 battalion chief costs from last year was over $600,000 with everything, with benefits and stuff. And now you have 3 battalion chiefs that were working twice as much, 3 times as much for 127, the total amount, which you have 169. So that's where we're able to make cuts and to also bring more people to the line. So you got more people on the line responding in the community than you do up top in admin. Which the families aren't very happy about because we're always on call.
I can't imagine.
Ankle monitor, actually.
Yeah.
They give you.
GPS tracking.
You're out of district.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
As a board member, I just want to say it's appreciated, and just talking to the chief a little bit about, trying to make travel arrangements. It sounds like you guys are all juggling schedules and
Yeah.
you guys are working hard and your families are sacrificing.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So that, obviously, we're not approving the board list right now, right?
So the next step of what happens in the committee process today is that the committee can say, yes, we agree with this proposed budget. And if that's the case, then you make the motion to levy the taxes. And usually I put my slide back up for that, Jimmy, just because it has the proper wording on it. So we get it right for state law. And then essentially what that does is that moves the budget forward into the process. So the budget committee would complete their process and say, we approve this budget for this amount, we're levying the taxes, and then it goes forward to the board for a final approval, if that makes sense. So
At a second reading, correct?
yes, it goes through like this whole second process. There'll be a board meeting. You would have that like in 2 weeks.
Which is the one that's on the 27th.
We would do another public notice. We would put the budget in the paper. And then the board would then say, yep, we're going to approve this budget. Or, the board can actually legally make a change to the budget in that board meeting and change a dollar amount.
Mhm.
Doesn't happen very often, very rare. I did see it once happen at Clackamas County.
Okay, so
So-
next question for the budget committee. Is this, you guys have more questions? You feel comfortable going forward, or are there questions about the previous budget that you guys would like to see? Right, so that makes more sense and you guys have more time to look at it.
Well, so with his question about the employee taxes, if you guys go and find something that needs to be changed there,
It
is
would be
that something we can do it even if we
Yes.
adopt it now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. It's because this is what we would call approval. It's not actually adoption. So the
Okay.
committee does the approval, the board adopts budgets.
Yes.
So again, so if we have a clerical error that we need to correct, essentially Jimmy and I would correct the numbers and we
Okay.
would just let the board know. We would put that into the resolution for the board and the board would make a motion to adopt
And
the corrected.
my inquiry into that amount is just an inquiry into the amount, that we're not making a change to the budget. And that we're just questioning if that was
Yeah, I think
calculated.
Well, if it's clerical error, it'd be a change.
Yes, and the law allows for us to fix typos and correct clerical errors. So, because unfortunately that does happen, right? But we've already caught a couple of typos. Some of you have mentioned those to Jimmy and he's let me know. And I'm like, great, we will get those cleaned up in the final version.
Like the duty officer
I
coverage.
agree. The reason why I bring this up is they got this the other day, right? So at the end of the day, again, they're a volunteer committee member, right? But it's a budget committee member, right? So I feel like they are due their time. If they need more information or something to think on, I assume that's the reason to give them, hence why next year we do it earlier.
Correct.
Oh, yeah.
So just because this happened doesn't mean that they should suffer going forward, right? So if you guys need the time to, process this, maybe ask some more questions, whatever that way, because again, you guys volunteer for this position. It's a needed position, right? I don't want anybody to feel rushed. At the end of the day, that's what I'm saying. We got June 27th is a beauty board meeting.
So are you looking for a motion?
I'm just asking. you
Drop
guys
hold.
how they feel.
Drop hold. Testing the waters. It's always good. I will say just for process, so everyone educated on, budget law and process, what do you have in front of you to accomplish? Like we talked about, committee will need to approve and to be able to forward it to the board for adoption. There is a newspaper publication that does have to, well, should under Oregon law be published within a timely manner. If it doesn't get published within a timely manner, it is considered a budget violation and the auditors will write it up in their report. But I will tell you there, on the flip side, there are no budget police coming to get you. So I'm going to be totally transparent with that. It is still best practice, of course, to follow the law and try to get this published on time. So
That's
I
part of
am giving you
transparency.
Yeah.
information. You will do with
So
it as
Krista,
you
can I,
will.
can I ask you a question? Can I ask questions? I'm learning this too, right? So if they it's not adoption, this is about recommendation. So if they do it, you guys still have time to look back at it. It's not adopted till the board adopts it. So if there's something you guys find over the weekend, then we can make those changes. It's still before they do. If we don't have this done before June 30th, we will not have money to operate on July 1. So we all know
That's
that.
the
And,
important
yeah,
part.
that's it.
Yeah.
But if you guys decide that this is in principle, what you guys, you think it's valid, you can, and we can still make changes to it. There still can be corrections to stuff that we find. But again, we're down to, and again, I apologize, this is a turd that was given to me, not too long ago. So we wanted to get this done. It's not, I'm sure there's clerical errors and things like that we have to go back and correct. So if you guys find something, we still have time to make those changes.
Sometimes the easiest thing to do is budget committee is somebody make a motion in a second, see if it sticks. If everybody votes for it, then you move on. If it doesn't pass, then you know the numbers. Yeah, because it seems like when you have these committees, nobody ever wants, oh, I'm good with it. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Nobody wants to say that, but if you just make a motion in a second, see if it sticks. If it sticks, you move on.
And is that the board and the budget committee or just the budget committee?
Just the budget committee. So
Okay.
it's the budget committee recommends it to the board.
And then
So
No,
I
she's got-
the
she's got-
board is part of. the
So you're part of the
Exactly.
budget
Okay.
committee
Yeah.
in this
It's all
context.
one committee.
Yeah.
So we do have one other public process piece
Mhm.
before you get to that, let's make a motion. And that is just, you technically, as a budget committee, you need to just quickly hold a public hearing, which and ask the public if anyone has any testimony or comment on the budget as presented, and then close the public hearing. So I'm gonna throw that out there for y'all to do. And
Well, that's
then you can
fine.
move into the next process.
Well, no, you didn't give me the,
I think
Oh,
it's
you
on the
did.
agenda, the public hearing piece,
Yep.
public testimony.
Mhm.
Yeah.
remember that.
Yes.
Yes, you need to invite the public with the opportunity to comment, essentially. That's what that means. Sometimes we call it
There
public
you go.
hearing or testimony.
So we did committee discussion, I think. Is there any more on committee discussion? Okay, any public comment?
Gary, can you see online?
Comment,
Yeah.
huh?
I am seeing no request for public comment on that.
Gentlemen,
Anyone in the back there? Okay,
let me hide my idea back there.
awesome.
Okay, any additional committee discussion?
I would just agree with what everybody said on the, let's try and get it done a little earlier next year. Sounds like you guys are doing everything you can, but
No, I'm gonna tell you, Austin, it has to be done earlier. I don't
Oh, yeah.
like down the wire. We should be talking about this in April and having our first meeting in May, and then you guys adopt it in June for the July 1. That's the way it should be. So,
Yeah,
moving forward, that's the plan.
we had that issue with the county's budget this year on that. Their new finance officer made a big error on the budget, and we had to have the budget completely redone on that. So when those things happen.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, you want to pull up the other slides then for them? Just so they can see them.
Yeah, she, on that, being unfamiliar with the software on that, she somehow managed to
Yes.
skip a column
Oh, no.
on that. So her current year budget column on that was based on the change from 2 years ago, not a year ago.
That's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
okay, can you get back to the other screen, please?
You want, this is the motion. You want the other one for your,
I thought, wait.
You want
other
the
one said I'm
agenda?
supposed to
You want
do
this?
Motion to impose the tax levy.
Mhm, yes, and then I have the other, this one, this gives you the
Okay.
That gives you the
wording that we
wording.
need to use.
Okay, so motion to oppose the tax levy, the property tax levy rate of $2.97.31 per thousand of assessed value.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I'll second.
Vote?
I,
Aye.
It sticks.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, now a motion to approve the 24-25 proposed budget of $14,474,600 as presented.
I believe that motion should be to recommend the board approve the budget as presented.
Actually, the committee gets to approve it, and then it will move to the board, so it's okay.
Is that-
Did we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, for a vote?
I,
Aye.
Aye.
Are you gonna abstain or a nay?
All opposed?
I'm an aye.
Okay, all opposed? Okay, all the ayes have it. Okay.
All right. Well, congratulations, you've moved forward in the process. So this means that Jimmy and I will work on some corrections.
Yeah.
So
Have the
if the budget
documents
committee
ready?
members are here, Dan, if you would, will you guys please send me an email? I just want to make sure I have your correct email, and what we'll do is we'll include that with the board packet moving forward. So you guys have that once we know where the budget is actual.
So you guys have Dan's name right in the beginning of this? This is David.
And
That's what happened.
I set
Correct
times
that,
out on
though.
Oh, I thought it was Dan.
Wednesday after
Is
lunch.
it
If you guys
your
don't want to
legal
come down
name?
and
Dan?
discuss stuff.
Then I will.
Yeah.
I basically said my office there for
I get it.
I know, yeah, I know. I saw it.
Call me.
Wednesday, right after lunch, 1 o'clock, I'm there. We barred a fire or something, we're there. We're there too, you know,
Then I will
but,
correct
you know,
that for you.
I've looked
Yeah.
at the board, Brick and Paul,
Where's
there's
his
the
name?
Rand's, I won't see them, but.
Dan,
if you guys have some
David.
questions,
Oh, David.
One, I
It's
think the
Dan
budget board
Garrison.
actuals is absolutely necessary.
going
I think it's
through
gonna
it. Thank
help
you
us,
for
and
letting
it'll
me
definitely help
Yeah.
people build next year.
Appreciate that.
So you can see where we're at.
We had that last year too. That didn't shake. So,
Brian, meeting adjourned, I'll stop.
Okay, it's 7:59
Yeah, well, I say-
and the meeting's adjourned.
All right,
thank you, everyone.
1 minute early, Austin.
a minute.
Then go home and see your wife before you go back